A listener production.
Hi, it's Holly Mitchell with you, keeping the seat warm for Natarsha Belling. Welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, birdwatching isn't just for dads anymore. It's booming, addictive, and drawing a new generation into nature. We unpack why so many young people are flocking to the hobby and how you can get involved. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines. It's Friday, the 30th of January. After months of pressure, the federal government will provide an extra $25 billion in public hospital funding for states and territories over a 5-year period, bringing the total amount of funding to almost $220 billion. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the deal will ease pressure on hospitals, aged care and disability services while keeping the system sustainable.
This agreement represents one of the most significant national reforms in living memory. These reforms will ensure that Australians can continue to access world-class healthcare as well as disability supports. It prioritises investment in our precious public health system and builds on my government's measures to strengthen Medicare.
The funding will expand urgent care clinics, bulk billing services and speed up hospital discharges for elderly patients waiting for aged care. National Cabinet also agreed to slow NDIS growth to 5 to 6% annually. Embattled federal opposition leader Sussan Ley has unveiled an interim Liberal shadow ministry. A number of existing shadow cabinet members, including Angus Taylor, Michaelia Cash, Ted O'Brien and Dan Tehan, will take on additional portfolios until the 2nd February Parliament sitting week begins. Ms Ley has warned the Nationals that if the coalition fails to reunite by next weekend, she will formalise a full shadow ministry without them. Meantime, Nationals leader David Littleproud has declined Ms Ley's invitation for reunification talks until he faces a potential leadership challenge on Monday. To Perth now, where there's been a double murder-suicide. Police were called to a home in Mossman Park where 2 teenage boys and 2 adults, believed to be their parents, were found deceased. Police say no weapon was used and there was no obvious signs of struggle. However, a note was found at the scene. Here is Detective Acting Inspector Jessica Securo.
The family have no reported family violence matters with police. We do know that both children experienced significant health challenges. This tragic incident occurred only this morning, and it will take time for police to investigate the full circumstances surrounding this incident.
And early screenings of the Brett Ratner-directed documentary Melania have been delayed in Australia. The film, which follows Donald Trump's lead-up to his White House return last January, is receiving a limited cinema run before streaming on Prime Video. Amazon reportedly paid $40 million for distribution rights and a further $35 million to market the project. In an embarrassing mishap, Friday morning screenings in Sydney and Melbourne were pulled after organisers realised an embargo forbade showings before 4 p.m. Meantime, the film has been entirely pulled from South African cinemas amid ongoing political tensions involving Trump's comments on the country. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the once daggy hobby that's become cool among Gen Z and millennials, birdwatching. Natarsha Belling was recently joined by Dr. César Puechmarin, a wildlife veterinarian, passionate birder and host of the podcast Death by Birding. Cesar explains why birdwatching is more addictive than you think, how social media has helped spark a global resurgence, and why paying attention to birds might be one of the simplest ways to reconnect with nature and ourselves.
Cesar, thanks so much for joining us. First big question for you. Why do you love birdwatching?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's sort of one of those ones you probably get asked pretty frequently as a birder, but don't ever have a great answer for. I guess for me, it's a wonderful way to get connected with nature. So it's a hobby and a pastime that has no end. Like you can see birds wherever you go. At any time of the year, anywhere in the world, you'll find birds. And so it's like, it's that game that just never ends.
And what I love about this resurgence in birdwatching is Gen Z absolutely love it. Why do you think there's been this newfound love of birdwatching?
Look, I suppose the thing we have to first consider is is it new for Gen Zs to get into birding, or is it just the sort of the advent or the prominence of social media that's making it more obvious, that young people are getting into birding? I have to keep reminding myself that I'm 34 and absolutely not Gen Z. Like, I'm a millennial, and definitely, there's a joke about turning 30 and the rite of passage is a pair of binoculars and you get out and do bird watching. So I guess we'd have to look at in the past, like whether or not young people were birding at this frequency. But you're right. I think that it feels like there's a surge, doesn't it? Like, it feels like there are lots of young people, especially engaging with online communities and like with TikTok and Instagram and all those sort of things with the social media platforms. And something about birding just suits those mediums. You know what I mean? Like, there's something about finding a bird. And I guess we've heard of that, we've seen that metaphor or that comparison between bird watching and Pokemon and other games, the idea of going out and collecting things. And perhaps there's a little bit of that. There's the sort of gamification of bird watching, in that you're going out to look for a specific bird and then you're collecting it by writing it down on a list, and eventually you get this larger list over time. And there's maybe a little bit of that. My concern with that aspect is that it'll be a trend and not something, long-term, that you won't see that, the long-term commitment to birding. But I don't think that's true. I think the thing about bird watching is it's incredibly addictive. And the moment you start going out and looking for these things, they just capture your imagination, they capture your curiosity, and all you can do is think about the next bird.
It sounds amazing, Cesar. I think what is also a positive with social media, we hear all the negatives all the time, but what's incredibly positive about social media is it gives you this platform as a birder or a birdwatching enthusiast to be surrounded by like-minded people and to share that enthusiasm with this whole new wonderful community.
Yeah, you're right. I think we do often hear these serious negative aspects of social media and the idea that it's creating, disconnectedness, or like they're becoming more disconnected as a community. But what it's done is it's allowed people to find their niche communities online and to connect with people who are like-minded. Like, back in the day, maybe you were the only bird watcher in the village, and now you know that, there's someone down the road who is equally as interested, and you can find that community. And again, maybe that's what is appealing to younger generations, that idea of finding your community, finding your people. And I've definitely seen a lot of that. And I mean, the scary thing is that these younger birders are so much better than me. Like, they, they have gone into it with just this absolute devotion, and it's really encouraging to see these younger generations where, I guess, the stereotype historically has been, that younger generations are just sitting on their phones or playing video games online or whatever. And maybe there's something wrong with that. Maybe there isn't. But what we're seeing is that these people are going out and connecting with nature. And I think that's ultimately the goal, right? Is that, like, it's all well and good to go and list birds, but I think that what we're finding is this deeper connection to nature, the excuse to go out, to experience nature, to learn something about nature, to, like, in your own time, elucidate a little portion of the natural world. And ultimately, that's what birding is. As silly as it seems on the surface, the idea of people going out with binoculars and wearing khaki and whatnot to try and, tick off a little sparrow somewhere. I think that...
I don't think, Cesar, it sounds silly at all. I think it sounds absolutely wonderful. How much of it, I'm really glad you've spoken about the connection with nature, because more and more we know, previous generations certainly understood it, but there is more and more evidence about how important it is connecting with nature for not only your physical health, whether that's hiking, walking, but also your mental health, for a moment to actually embrace silence and peace and the extraordinary elements of this natural world and these beautiful creatures.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that to start with, like, everyone kind of does birding differently. So there definitely are the people that go out and, have the peaceful, mindful activity of bird watching and of, just observing. And then you have, like, the hardcore birders who go out with it with with more of a sense of an extreme sport, to seeing as many birds as possible within a 24-hour period. We see those big games. But you're right, like, the mental health benefits of bird watching are enormous. It is a mindful activity. You can go out there, you can connect with nature, and you don't have to go far, right? It's sort of, harking back to what we said before with them being everywhere, like you can birdwatch in your backyard every single day for a year and see something different. Maybe not a different species every day, but you'll see different behaviors. You'll see that, you'll see that connection of that bird with the environment around it as well. And sort of the hope is that will instill a sense of, I guess, a love of nature for people, and that will sort of seep into their everyday lives. Mm-hmm. I think it's a quote, I don't know who it's been attributed to, but it's the idea of in order for someone to want to protect something, they need to first love it, right? And the way for people to do that is to connect with it and is to engage with it. And I think that's what we're seeing with birdwatching. People are maybe starting birdwatching because it seems like a fun, quirky hobby, and then they're staying because they're learning something about nature, and they're realizing the sort of the peril that the environment's in, and that their local parks are important as habitat for these birds. And then as a result, they want to protect those areas.
For you, Cesar, you were talking about how you found bird watching incredibly addictive, and you've got this amazing social media platform where you post incredible pictures and great content. What is the wildest story that you've heard from a bird watcher, as in they've found this incredibly rare bird, or they've been able to travel to this extraordinary place and retell a story? What's the craziest, wildest story you've ever heard?
There are quite a few. I mean, birders are notorious for going out of their way to go bird watching. I mean, in terms of, my podcast is called Death by Birding, and unfortunately we talk a lot about, it's the idea that you want to die doing something that you love. And bird watching, which seems nice, but at the same time, bird watching can put you in predicaments and scary situations. And I mean, there are bird watchers who have, been abducted by guerrilla, trying to sneak into territories that they shouldn't, to just go see that one bird. And I know people who have traveled to Antarctica to, go see penguins. I know people that have gone deep into the desert just to see that one grass wren, a fleeting glimpse. They might spend all of their savings just to see, maybe a 2-second flash of one incredibly rare bird. But ultimately, like, that's it. It's adventure, isn't it? Like, bird watching is a type of adventure, regardless if you travel far from home or simply just in your local backyard. It's like just that little taste of adventure.
And in regards to if someone's listening and they want to start, this sounds amazing, they want to start being a birder, what would your advice be to them? Yeah,
it doesn't take much. To be a bird watcher or a birder, and we won't go into the semantics of the terminology, because I can guarantee you, bird watchers and birders are a pedantic bunch, and we have our own language. But in order to start, it's just about watching birds. If you sit on your front deck, or if you sit on your front step and watch noisy miners or magpies, and you appreciate them, then I've got news for you. You're a bird watcher. It really doesn't take much. But if you're wanting to take that to the next level, I'd recommend getting a field guide. But also, there are lots of great apps that are incredibly useful, not only for your own benefit in order to get information about these birds, but also now people are contributing to citizen science through these apps. So there's eBird. Were you getting your phone to download these now, Natasha? I can see.
Yeah, because I'm actually doing this and on the phone right now, because I actually have a bird that is in my backyard, Cesar. And I don't know, A, what it is, B, it's extraordinarily noisy. And I was thinking, okay, how do I identify this? And this is the advantage, again, of technology. In the old days, you go to your bird watching book.
Yeah.
or almost look up in an encyclopedia of different birds and species. But now technology has given us this window where, is that right? I can use an app to identify straight away?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's funny, isn't it, that, we have this tool in our pocket at all times that holds all of human information. We spend a lot of it just like scrolling through silly videos. But we do have access to these apps. Like I said before, eBird, which is a great app for logging your birds, and that contributes to citizen science and helps with the conservation of the birds, But yeah, there are apps like Merlin, which is also run by Cornell, part of the Cornell University, and they run eBird as well. And these apps now, you can take a photo of a bird or even record their call, and the app will identify it for you. Now, look, some people might say that that's cheating. I don't know where I stand with it, because I've definitely used it at times. I do think that when you're getting started, it's not necessarily crucial, but it's such a wonderful experience to identify it yourself, if that makes sense. Like, not to poo-poo the whole, app IDing process. But I think you'll get a great sense of achievement by finding a field guide and then, going through and go, I think that's what I saw. I think that's the bird. It was a pheasant cuckoo in my backyard. And that's potentially, the pathway towards addiction to having that little boost of dopamine, whatever it is. You can definitely go and use those apps. And I absolutely, especially when I go somewhere new. So like when I've been bird watching in Central America or in Southeast Asia or something, and the birds, there are a lot of them, and some of them look very similar, and I've definitely struggled. So I'm not saying never use Merlin or any of these identification apps. Like, they definitely have their place. I think that if you're starting, it can be great, but also trust yourself, trust your instincts. Go look through a book and see what you can find. And you know what? If you misidea it, who cares? It doesn't really matter. It's about getting started, and then maybe a couple of years down the line, you think, actually, maybe that bird I saw wasn't a pheasant cuckoo, but it's a personal journey. It's all about just getting out there and experiencing nature.
So incredibly well said. We love your enthusiasm. And as I mentioned before, you've got a fantastic social media account. Cesar, where can we find more about you and your bird watching right across the world? Yeah,
so my personal Instagram is Cesar_on_safari, where I share most of my photography. And then there's Death by Birding, Death_by_birding. And I also have, I published a book at the end of last year. It's called Nature People, and it's just a collection of stories of individuals around Australia who are sort of devoted to nature, I suppose, and sort of their experience in being naturalists.
It is a wonderful way to live your lives. And thank you so much for joining us, Cesar. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Natasha.
That was birdwatcher Dr. César Puechmarin speaking with Natarsha Belling. That's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'll be back tomorrow with the weekend briefing. Sasha is joined by the 2025 TikTok Creator of the Year, Eli Matangi.
A listener who maybe isn't familiar with your page and your content, how would you describe it?
Dad life, Tongan, and good vibes. And it's funny because so many parents, not only dads, can relate. And I get all these messages and everyone's like, oh man, like, you make being a dad look so fun. It's crazy because it is fun, but it's just another day in our life.
And we'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram @The Briefing Podcast. I'm Holly Mitchell. See you next time.